Hello and welcome to the Fireplace Podcast. This is episode 18, part 2 of our inheritance tax special with John. First off, our disclaimer. We are amateur investors, so our content here is intended to be us learning together rather than regulated financial advice. We urge you to check the ideas that you find here with other sources. So, without further ado, John, welcome back.
Hi, good to be back.
And we've also got Mike.
Hi there.
So where did we get up to? What's next on the running order, John?
I think I just wanted to take a slight step back and point out that we've got people who will be somewhere on a spectrum between having almost no money to give away and having shed loads to give away, and also depending on where they are in their fire journey, whether they've just retired, whether they're several years in, whether they worked 10 more years or whatever, all those sorts of different scenarios. So you need to, these are just general things that we could do, and you need to decide where on the spectrum you are, which ones might apply to you, and go away and work it out for yourself. So these are, perhaps if you're on the end where you've got shed loads to give away, then maybe they might all apply to you, or most of them.
I guess also with gifting, people could have children at different ages, or dependents, or charities or things they want to give to. So a lot of that is very personal, and what we're talking about is just some sort of general guidelines.
Yeah, and also a lot of it comes under mindset as well. So it's more about, am I comfortable giving it away now? How much can I give away now? Do I, how much are you in the controlling mindset, trying to control what your children do with it? And, are you comfortable giving it away? All that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of mindset stuff around this that you need to get your head around, and what you decide what you're going to do, how controlling you're going to try and be or not. Probably better not.
As well as your own mindset, there's the mindset of the recipient as well, and you're going to be looking at your kids and saying, are they mature enough for this? Are they just going to go and buy a Ferrari?
Yes, yeah. Are they going to go and buy a Lambo and that's it, and they're done, one and done? Or there was a fire fund if they'd have waited 10 years, but now they've just got a Lambo. It's going to depreciate and it's going to cost them a fortune to run. So yeah, there's that as well. But I guess, as we said last time, you don't want to be a control freak. If you try and control freak your children, you probably end up estranged from them. You've got to trust them. You've got to, young people have different priorities than you do. Even in the same family, they'll have different ways of, living now. So you've got to trust them to a certain extent. You've got to get your mindset around that and not try and not say, they've not invested every penny, therefore I'm not going to give them any more. So all that sort of stuff. So we got on to, I think the thing we sort of prematurely covered last time is where, we're starting to look about reducing beneficiary taxation by doing things before you get there. So as we said before, you pay 40% inheritance tax, and if you die after age 75, then the beneficiary pays income tax when they withdraw it. So losing something like 52 or 64%, depending on whether the basic rate or higher rate when they come to take it out, which is a large number and quite scary. So one of the things you can do is take out your tax-free lump sum before age 75, because your tax-free lump sum is no longer tax-free once you're dead. So you could have 268,000, the current life lump sum allowance in there, of tax-free money, and if you don't take it out and die, then suddenly your spouse has got to pay 20%, 40% inheritance tax to take it out of your pension, which is not a good place to be. So if you just took it out slowly before age 75, then you wouldn't be paying at least the income tax part of that. You might take it out and gift it, and therefore you could try and avoid it altogether, but certainly you can avoid the extra 20-40% of income tax that they might pay. So obviously the closer to 75 you are, the more important that becomes. And also, of course, if you've got a lump sum allowance problem where you're going to exceed it, or you have exceeded it, then obviously you want to get that out as fast as you can, because you're losing tax on the growth.
I guess you don't want to be withdrawing this from a tax sheltered environment into a taxable one, though. You want to make sure you protect the growth of this. So we're talking about moving it into your ISA within the allowances, really, aren't we?
Potentially, but you could do more. Because obviously, as we said before, your GIA gains allowance or gains resets on death.
Oh.
So you could consider your GIA as a low tax alternative.
So you can game that situation, that little vulnerability.
So you could game that situation. If you're not gifting it, you could game it by putting in your GIA if you haven't got any ISA space. because you're only paying dividend tax, and hopefully that's at basic rate, which is something like 0.15% of your GIA per year, which is teeny, so it'll take a long time for that ever to exceed 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's if you happen to have assets that are dividend bearing, you mean?
Yes, true. If you have non-dividend bearing assets, and you could just stick it in there, and it would effectively be an ISA. Although you are gaming the system a little bit in that you're hoping that they never change the rules on gains resetting on death. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they're putting a limit on it, which they might well do something like that. Put a limit on how much. Yeah.
You had to say that, didn't you? You get a great idea like that, and then you get this sinking feeling. No, the politicians will be over this one day.
Well, they will, because more and more people, because now all the allowances are all horrible everywhere. More and more people are going to have GIAs. More people are going to have gains on death.
Fiscal drag is dragging us all into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Fiscal drag's dragging everybody into GIAs. So yeah. So as we say, take your tax-free lump sum, stick it in your ISA. For example, 20k a year into your ISA, if that's a nice simple approach for you, depending on how much you've got, whether you haven't got a GIA problem already, all those sorts of things. And the other thing, of course, is if once you get access to your pension, normally people get access to the pension before state pension age, and they don't have any other things. If they haven't got a DB, your DB pension, they've got 12.5 grand of personal allowance they can use. So take out that 12.5 grand of your pension, taxable pension, tax free, because you will pay effectively 2.5 grand on that if you take it out after state pension age. So you're saving yourself 2.5 grand a year of future tax by taking it out now. So that's one thing you can look at.
Yeah.
The same, or you could just take it out and gift it. So you could then say, right, I'm going to take out to the top of basic rate allowance. I'm going to take out 50 grand a year out of my pension of taxable money. I'll be paid 40%, so just below the 40% tax band. So I'm paying 20% tax now. I'm going to gift it straight away, and therefore, they're going to save 40% tax later on.
Okay, so this is the bigger hitters that are going to have to accept some tax, some income tax. So that you say, having made that decision, right, well, we'll max out the opportunity of that.
Yes. And I say if you do the normal gifting thing, then you've got a 7-year timer on that. But if you're drawing, say, 50k a year out of your pension, and your spouse is maybe doing that too, that's 100 grand. You're probably not spending that. You've got some excess income there. Yeah.
So the 7-year timer is the 7-year rule, I guess, in that if you pass away before 7 years have elapsed, the recipient of the money would normally pay inheritance tax on that.
The estate normally pay. I think, the rules contradict themselves on this when I've read the HMRC pages. So I simplified this when I put it in the document because it's not 100% clear to me how that works. Because it seemed to be saying that the estate paid it, and then in other places it says the recipient pays it. And
so somebody pays it.
Yeah, so I think what it is if the first 325 grand, the estate pays it, and if you've gifted more than 325 grand, then the last person to receive it pays that inheritance tax on it, which would be fun if it's
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fits with my understanding. In the first instance, it's the estate, and then there are circumstances where if that fails, then it falls on the recipient.
And my understanding is, the taper where they talk about it goes down by 4% a year or whatever it is after 3 years. That only applies if you've done more than 325 grand, I think, as well. From my reading of it, I read it differently the first time, and then somebody pointed out to me it doesn't actually say that. It says, it's on the recipient if it's more than a certain amount. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll just leave it out the document because it's too complicated.
But if you can document that this has been regular gifting, then you sidestep this whole estate 7-year taper thing. That's straight away free and clear of IHT, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you spend I'm sorry, Mike.
So that's regular gifting from excess income.
Yeah. So we jumped forward a bit there, didn't we? So yeah. So say the other option was to gift from excess income. Like we said, if you're taking 100 grand a year out of 2 pensions, which will probably be about 43k each after tax. So that's 86k, and you're only spending 50k or whatever. Then you've got 33k you can gift free and clear to your whoever you fancy, every year.
How do we safely establish that this is excess income when it's a pension withdrawal? Is there a rate at which you are deemed to be able to withdraw from your pension sustainably?
I've not seen one. They just assume you have income. So as far as I can tell, you just need to have the income. I guess for people with a big pension, if they were a lump sum allowance anyway, that would be a reasonable number anyway. I guess in a couple, one of you would tend to have a smaller pension, and maybe that it wouldn't be sustainable, but maybe it's sustainable until you get to state pension, and I don't think you can argue with that, so
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But it does need to be income. We have, there's been a lot of discussion about this. What counts as income here? And it's not the same as any other income. It's all very strange. So it's pension withdrawals, including the tax-free lump sum, but I think only if you do it as part of a regular payment. It's a bit strange. I'm not sure whether it counts if you just take it as a lump sum and say, right, I've got 250 grand out of my pension this year. That's a tax-free lump sum there. I don't think that works, but I don't know.
And I think you need to keep good records, don't you?
Yeah, well, yeah. So we come into that. So income is pension withdrawals, including the 25% tax-free if you take it as UF plus. I'm not 100% clear on the FAD side of things. Flex extra drawdown, sorry. It counts as dividends, even from your ISA, which is a bit weird. Yeah, so even though it's tax protected, it still counts as income. And also interest, even from your ISA. On BTL income, which wouldn't count for normal pension stuff, but it counts for this, so anything that's like a job type income or, rental, interest, dividends. So, people could quite easily get, 50, 60 grand a year each of, if they've got quite a lot of money and got it set up right, maybe 50 grand after 45 grand, 50 grand after tax each, so 90 grand. So you're probably not spending that, it's hard to spend that unless you're a Henry, I guess, So yeah, that's one way you can look at it. So as we said, you could probably put maybe 30 grand a year or something outside your estate straight away, just doing something like that. Maybe more, depending on how frugal you are. But you do need to keep excellent records of both your expenditure and your income, where it all came from. I'm also not 100% clear if you actually need to take out the income to count it. So if you've got dividends in your ISA, do you need to take the dividends out of your ISA for that to count as income? Or can you just say, well, I got dividends in the ISA, but I've used this instead as a proxy? So there's all those sorts of things to think about. But yeah, so the gifting from excess income is obviously the way to do it because it's immediately outside your estate. And I think a load of people are going to do this from next year. I think a lot of people haven't been doing it. I think the numbers are quite small right now. But from next year, I think it's going to be tens, hundreds of thousands of people doing it, just opening their pension, letting the moths fly away, and starting to give out the gifts. Again, I guess if you're really a high roller, you can think about taking it out at 40% and gifting it straight away. So take out higher rate tax, gift it straight away. Hopefully you're only doing that if you're doing gifting from excess income, because the risk, of course, is you die within 7 years. Then it's real bad, But so you want to be gifting that from excess income if you take out at a higher rate. So take out between 50 and 100, between the 50 and 100 grand limit, take that out and gift that as well. So that's a possibility. So you're saving 20% tax down the road. So that's one thing you could think about. Real high roller stuff. And the other side of things, of course, is to have a plan for all this stuff. So you decide where on this spectrum you lie between needing it all and wanting to give away 90% of your estate because you've got way too much or whatever it is, and then create a plan around that. So I have created a bunch of flowcharts to give you a starting point to think about these things, and they start with, whether you're how much you need, so basic rate or higher rate, whether you're gifting or not gifting, and that's whether you're gifting irregularly or regularly from excess income. So I think there's at least, I can't remember, there's 4 or 6 flowcharts are created now. It was a while back to give you the starting point for thinking about these things. They can go away.
So those are all available through our wiki, are they?
They're not on the wiki yet. They will be eventually, but they're on the Facebook group at the moment.
Right, so in the files area of the Facebook group.
Yeah, it's just more fiddly to upload the images stuff onto the wiki, so I've not got round to that yet.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of flowcharts you can start to use for, that's right, have I got a GIA or not was one of the options in there, I think. So that made it 6, yeah. And then there are the what I call the life-changing considerations. So, if you're cohabiting, when you die, your spouse, well, you're going to take a 40% inheritance tax bill before your spouse, whatever you want to call them, gets access to it. So, seriously consider getting married if you're going to save a few $100,000 worth of money.
That's going to be the most romantic proposal ever, darling.
Absolutely, yeah.
Darling, I think we should get married for tax reasons.
Yes. Well, we did have that couple last month trying to get married, divorced for tax reasons as well.
Yes, what was that? Divorce to be able to divvy up their pensions more tax efficiently. Yes,
because one's over the lump sum allowance and one
wasn't
isn't.
it?
Yeah.
But
yes.
we took that out of the podcast because we thought that was a bit contentious and was quite obviously tax evasion.
Well, that's it. I mean, presumably getting married is cast iron. You're not going to be said, "Oh, you've done that for tax evasion purposes," are you?
Yeah, but getting divorced and staying living together, I think, it's a bit, it's grey, very grey, dark grey. Yeah. And then the other side of this, of course, is if you've already had a spouse die on you and you've got their allowances, do you get remarried? Because then potentially you're losing allowances because you want to get, I think that there's some argument about this, whether you actually get effectively 3 allowances or 2 between you. So you need to look into this very carefully. But, so it's like, can the person use their previous spouse and their own allowance, and then the next person uses just their allowance? Or do you only get 2? So you only get 100 million, or do you get 1.5 million effectively? So it's a bit dubious which one you get. Different sources have said different things. Certainly when Martin Lewis did his inheritance special last year, was it last year or the year before now? I can't remember. But he was saying don't get remarried because of this. But then I've seen online people either say, no, you can do it because you can use the first one. The first person to die can use their spouse's one. I guess it might depend who dies first in the relationship. It all gets very complicated. So be very, very careful if you get remarried when you've inherited allowances. That's all I can say. Take professional advice on what will happen and who gets the allowances.
Right.
I guess so then we get into the real ones. Why not go somewhere where there isn't inheritance tax? Why not go and live somewhere? If
now you're talking.
Yeah, now we're talking.
What's the scope here?
So the easiest one, of course, is the Isle of Man. They don't have inheritance tax or capital gains tax, so you could go there.
I quite like it there anyway. So
yeah, no, you like it there.
That's a side benefit of if I do move there. That'd be great.
I guess it's more attractive to those who don't have children or grandchildren as well. Because obviously you don't want to move away from those. You don't want to move out of the country really. If you've got dependents, you want to see regularly because it's harder to get to those places.
Just a nice test at how much do they actually want to see you. If they're willing to get that flight or that ferry, then they're serious and they really want their inheritance.
Oh, you're gonna dangle the inheritance in front of them and say, "Please come see me." Yeah. But you still definitely would only see them irregularly rather than regularly if that was the case.
How much more favourable is the Isle of Man? I mean, they simply don't have IHT. Is that right?
As far as I can tell, yeah, they don't have IHT and they have a medium income tax rate and they have no capital gains tax. As far as I can tell. I don't know how you get in there. I don't know what the rules are for transferring things across there. All of those things. So that might be a problem anyway. If you've got £1 million in a GIA and you try and transfer it to Isle of Man, does that become, become realised? I don't know.
I think it's a case of HMRC have to release you. You have to show that you've severed significant ties, like owning property in the UK, and that you in order to be tax resident over there. And
but I don't know whether
point,
when you have to transfer your investments to their platforms, and therefore that would be a realisation event as well, gains realisation potentially. So I don't know those things. I've not looked. Anyway, this is getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
We're
into the weeds here.
Yeah, but I think with the growth of the number of single parent or single people without children, I think this might become more common. Why people move to Dubai as well, that sort of thing. There's all sorts of places you can go if you're a bit more flexible on location. And the other one was to leave more to your children on first death. So as we said before, we get a 2 million allowance per estate, so per person effectively. But generally, you don't use it on the first person to die in a couple because you just pass everything to your spouse and just kick it down the road. Then when they die, they might have more than 2 million and they're losing their residence allowance. So what you can do is, gift more on the first death. So you're using more of that more of your allowance. So effectively, you're giving yourself 4 million allowance before you tapered rather than 2 million. Yeah.
I guess with
Okay,
that,
so
you'd
that
have
that
to.
only applies for the big hitters that are into this taper.
But everybody's going to get there eventually, aren't they? Another 20 years of freezing the
I'm not
allowances.
sure I am.
Yeah, maybe the people who've retired already, maybe not. But yeah, okay.
I guess the risk there is if you gift on the first person in the couple to die, there might be a chance that the second person in the couple doesn't have quite the lifestyle they're expecting.
Yeah, so you need to be on the big hitter end where it doesn't
Yeah.
matter so much, and you were planning on giving a load anyway. Yeah. But also there's the other angle to that is if it's a pension and you're under 75, you suddenly avoided all that income tax as well. So if you gift your pension, I think I worked it out. There's something like a 30% chance one of us will die before 75, but it's only like a 3% chance both of us would die before 75. So there's a much bigger chance of giving away a much larger amount, income tax free, if you do it before age 75. Yeah.
So your 75th birthday celebrations are going to be quite muted because that's higher tax day.
Yes. Well, yeah. There's also next April as well. I'm just worried about children taking that hit on their grandparents because the hundreds of thousands of tax they would save and get inheritance. Self-funding. It's like the Tontine thing. It's self-funding.
Come on, move on. Let's not be silly.
Okay, so let's move on to gifting then. So just obviously a caveat at the start of all this: if you're going to start giving your money away, then plan for longevity. Don't give it all away that you might need. Average life expectancy is in the mid 80s. Once you're to adulthood, it's in the mid 80s. Probably something like 85 for men and 87 for women. 1 in 4 live into the 90s. And it's there's evidence that more wealthy people live longer, so probably more than 1 in 4 live into their 90s.
Yeah.
And so obviously don't give away anything that you might need before your 95th birthday. So got to keep that going. So as we discussed before, there's normal gifting, what are called potentially exempt transfers, where you can give away $3,000 a year to anybody you fancy, fully exempt from inheritance tax, and anything above that stays within your estate for 7 years.
On a taper?
No, not on a taper.
Oh.
But we don't believe, unless it's more than 325,000. Yeah. And then it's not your taper, it's the recipient's taper. So, yeah. So I think that's how it works. I'm not 100% sure because the HMRC documentation is very woolly and keeps cross-referencing different things at different points. That's not clear. Okay. And obviously you need to keep records of that. So if you're gifting, don't give your executors a prize and, they haven't declared that you've given away 200,000 in the last 7 years and then suddenly find it and they go, oh dear, and we're liable for that as executors. So keep a good record of this. Keep a list of everything, every gift you've given and how much was exempt, what date it was exactly. So there's that part for the 7-year countdown rule. So give away every year, wait 7 years. You can do maths on that, whether it's worth doing that and, what the odds are based on longevity planning, but it's all a bit vague. But you can do that. The other side is what we say, if preferred, if you can do it, is generate income using pensions, using dividends, using interest, and then gift from excess income. And it's immediately outside your estate. And that counts as any employment income you have, any pension income you have, including the tax-free lump sum, we think, in certain circumstances, any rental income, any dividends, any interest.
And you must counts as regular for this?
I think you just need to do it every year, but I think I'd want to get it on a more regular basis to establish the pattern.
I think we looked at this, didn't we, and discussed it in the group. I think the pattern is almost more important than anything else. That I think if you do a huge gift 1 year and then nothing for 6 months, and then another gift 6 months later, Inland Revenue might say, well, those are just 2 big gifts. Whereas I think it has to be at least kind of quarterly, monthly, or on a regular schedule to show a sensible pattern.
That's really awkward when you're taking money out of a GAA and you have to pay a transaction charge every time. But
yeah.
Well, maybe is it annual but regular sufficient?
I don't see why not. Give it quarterly when you get your dividends or whatever. I don't know.
I think if you can show a decent pattern annually might work, but I think it'd have to be kind of a sequence of years. And you might not last that long.
But if like me, every April you're making a disposal to use up your allowance, then that's the logical time to say,
Yeah,
well,
I think so. I think it counts. I don't see why it wouldn't, but yeah, I would look very carefully at it, and I would, I'm looking to gift more often when I get around to that point. But yeah, there's the challenges of, wait a minute, I'm going to incur gains tax and transaction charges and all this sort of stuff depending on when I do it. So I've got to be very careful about it. But you need to have evidence of all of this. So you need to have evidence, everything you've spent. So you buy a car one year, and then suddenly you've used up an extra 20 grand, 40 grand, whatever it is of your allowance, of your income that you can't gift that year. So you need to be, aware of things like that. And you also need a record of all the things that you gifted so that you have enough. And there is a form on the site, I forget the name, I think it's like IHT 41020, something like that, on the site where you can see what they expect to see, and then just create your spreadsheet to mirror it, or just fill it in on the paper to keep records. But that's for the gifting side. You need to also keep evidence of your expenditure. So some caveats around that. So obviously it needs to be a free and clear gift. You can't say, here's 20 grand, you must spend it on, you must put it in your ISA, you must do this. That's not a gift. That's a gift with reservation, so that doesn't count. So you've got to trust whoever you're giving it to. I mean, you can be cheeky and give it 20 grand chunks and suggest here's a nice allowance sized chunk of cash for you.
You can let it be known that you want them to be sensible and long term with this.
Yes, exactly. But you can't insist, and you can't, verify it. And you start verifying it, you're following up. I'm sure that HMRC will catch up with you eventually on that. You can gift to children in JICE and junior ISAs and junior SIPs. That's obviously something quite easy to do.
How does that work with the child's own junior ISA and junior SIP allowance? I can't remember offhand what those numbers are.
So it's 9,000 for a junior ISA, and the normal 2880/3,600 for a SIP is the maximum you can put in each year. And I did ask about that, whether you could put in more if the child happens to be a TikTok star or something. And no, you can't put in any more than that.
Right.
So you could only put in 2880 in the SIP to get your 720 tax relief, etc. So you can do that. I know I've done that for my granddaughter. So on HL, for instance, you can go on a site. You can say, if I know my granddaughter's name, date of birth, and I think her account number or account name, you can just put money directly in. But you have to be the parent to actually invest it. So you've got that challenge.
Oh, right. So you can put the money in as a grandparent.
Yes, but you can't invest it as a grandparent.
You can't choose the assets, right?
No, yeah. So it's the parents that choose that, but at least it's avoiding it being parent money, So, but then you've got to coordinate to make sure you're not putting it in and the other grandparents putting it in, and you bust the limit or anything like that, So you've got to coordinate with somebody to do that. As I said, you can gift to adults. You can give it them in lifetime ISA or ISA-sized chunks, but you can't say, here's an ISA allowance, you must put this in an ISA. That's not a gift. Yeah. So unfortunately, you can explain the benefits of compounding, investing, etc., and you probably want to do that. But you've got to try and not be a control freak. You've got to step back from if I was doing this, I'd be doing it, and they're not doing it, therefore they're doing it wrong. You've got to step back from that. I guess there's a risk that you're fueling lifestyle inflation for your kids. So you might be making it so they can't retire. If you're bugging them 20 grand a year and they're spending 20 grand extra a year, and then when they come to retire, they're expecting 60, 80 grand of income a year. That's making it much harder for them, that sort of thing. But there's also the flip side, is that financial stress is what breaks up most marriages, or a lot of marriages. And if you're reducing the financial stress of the marriage by giving them loads of money, then maybe that will make it more resilient. There's a possibility that would happen.
It's clear there's an information component to this, that you're trying to impart the same mindset onto them.
Yeah, and obviously they're not at the same place in the journey as you are, because you've accumulated all the bits of fire knowledge and fire experience, and that's taken 20 years perhaps to get to where you are, maybe more. So they're there much earlier on that journey. I always like to think that I'm going to lose at least half anyway. So you're going to lose 40% inheritance tax and probably the 20% income tax, when I die anyway. So don't worry too much about it. As long as they don't waste half of it, it's a win.
Yeah.
There's that side of things. So that's the big thing on gifting. So I think that's come to the end of the obvious things to talk about. I guess there's a lot of mindset stuff we could talk about. So I don't know where you want to take it from here, or if you want to wrap that up. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had some examples on the podcast of people at various different stages, and I think there's interesting angles on inheritance tax for those. I think, Andy, you were talking about some people, not on the podcast, but in the Facebook group, with disabled children, where gifting becomes a bit more nuanced, doesn't it?
Yes, they've got different goals. The other thing that struck me during this, I not long ago read The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel, and there was a lot that harked back to that in terms of this mindset stuff, that might be a useful read for people.
Yeah, I think that the don't be a control freak thing, I think, is the big thing in gifting. You've got to get your head around that. So, because most FIRE people are quite disciplined in what they do with their money, and your children probably aren't. So, certainly your grandchildren aren't. Yeah.
If we're all done at that, thank you very much, John. Let's wrap this up. So, listeners, thank you for listening. And there's going to be this. If this has raised questions, then we are all there on our Facebook group. If you want to, let's burrow down into the weeds of the different topics that we've covered today. We do appreciate comments and feedback. So you'd find that at the Fireplace UK on Facebook. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support us, there are details in the podcast description and on our website. And what's our next episode going to be about? We don't know yet, do we? We don't know yet. Pencil it in. It's a mystery. We'll leave that one dangling. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thanks very much.
Bye.